He loved her only when she was silent, but when she found her voice and walked into his wedding with the sons he abandoned, she silenced him forever. The dining room was perfect. Pauline D. Ledford had spent the entire afternoon making sure of it. Candles flickered across the polished marble table, casting soft shadows over the meal she'd prepared with her own hands, Rodney's favorites, arranged like an offering. The champagne sat chilling in its bucket, two crystal flutes positioned just so. In her pocket, folded into a small square, was the pregnancy test. Positive. After 3 years of trying, of doctor's appointments and careful tracking and quiet hope, she was finally going to give him the news that would change everything. She'd rehearsed the words a dozen times. Practiced the smile. Imagined his face when he realized that their family, the family he always said he wanted, was about to begin. The front door opened at exactly 6:30. Rodney K. Wilson was nothing if not punctual. Pauline smoothed her dress and moved toward the foyer, her heart hammering with anticipation. But the man who stepped through the door wasn't smiling. He carried no flowers. No briefcase from another long day at the office. Just a thin manila folder and an expression she'd never seen before, cold, already distant, as if he'd left her weeks ago and his body was only now catching up. Rodney? Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. I made dinner. I have something to tell. Sign these. He dropped the folder onto the console table between them. It landed with a slap that made her flinch. Pauline stared at it, then at him. What is this? A non-disclosure agreement. And divorce papers. He said it the way someone might order coffee. Flat. Transactional. My lawyer says the NDA is necessary given your proximity to my career. I can't have you talking to the press. The words didn't make sense. They were sounds, not sentences. Pauline opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Rodney, I don't understand. Where I'm. You're what, Pauline? He stepped closer, and for the first time in 3 years of marriage, she saw something like contempt flicker across his face. You're plain. You're a housewife who doesn't even have a house to keep anymore. Do you know what they say at the firm? They ask me why I settled. Why I married someone so ordinary. She felt the pregnancy test burning against her thigh through the thin fabric of her pocket. I'm pregnant. The words fell into the space between them like stones into deep water. For a moment, just a heartbeat, something flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. Then you'll handle it quietly, he said. I've already moved on, Pauline. Her name is Vivian Ashford Kent. Maybe you've heard of the Ashford Kents? Old money. Real class. Everything you're not. He picked up the folder and pressed it into her shaking hands. Sign. You have until morning. By dawn, Pauline was standing in the rain with a single suitcase, watching the tail lights of her husband's car disappear into the mist. He never looked back. Neither would she. Pauline had always been good at being quiet. It was what Rodney loved about her, he'd said once, early in their marriage. You're not like other women, he'd told her, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You don't fill every silence with noise. You let me think. So she'd learn to think for him too. Learn to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. Black coffee at 6 a.m. Shirts pressed with military precision. Dinner at 7, never a minute late. She'd molded herself into the shape of his convenience and told herself it was love. The pregnancy test had been hidden in her nightstand for 3 days. She'd taken it twice more just to be sure, watching those 2 pink lines appear like a promise. Like proof that all the silence, all the swallowed words and dimmed smiles, had been worth it. A baby would change everything. A baby would make them whole. Tonight, she would tell him. The champagne was expensive. She'd used her own savings, the small account her mother had left her. The dress was new, cream silk that hugged her still flat stomach. She'd even gone to the salon, let them style her hair into something elegant instead of her usual simple bun. When the door opened at 6:30, she was ready. But Rodney wasn't alone. A woman stepped in behind him. Tall, angular, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Pauline's entire wardrobe. She had the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers, sharp cheekbones, ice blue eyes, lips painted the color of arterial blood. Pauline, Rodney said, not looking at her. "This is Vivian Ashford-Kent, my fiancé." The word hit her like a fist to the sternum. "You're what?" Vivian's smile was a knife wrapped in silk. "Oh, Rodney, you haven't told her? How awkward." She moved through the foyer like she owned it, trailing one manicured finger along the console table. "Though I suppose it doesn't matter now. You're being very generous with the settlement, darling. Most men wouldn't give their mistakes anything at all." Pauline's legs had gone numb. "Rodney, what is she talking about?" He finally looked at her. Really looked at her. And in his eyes, she saw nothing. No guilt. No regret. Just impatience, like she was a meeting running long. "I'm divorcing you, Pauline. Effective immediately." He pulled the folder from his briefcase. "Sign the NDA and the papers. You have 24 hours. But the word stuck in her throat. "Pregnant. I'm pregnant." "You're what?" Vivian laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Poor? Uneducated? A nobody from nowhere who thought she could climb above her station by marrying well." She leaned in close enough that Pauline could smell her perfume, something French, something that cost more than rent. "Girls like you always think you're special. You're not." Rodney checked his watch. "We have reservations. Sign the papers, Pauline. Don't make this difficult." They left her standing there, surrounded by candles and champagne and the wreckage of her belief that love could be earned through silence. The pregnancy test was still in her pocket. And in 24 hours, she would have to decide, tell the truth and give him power over her forever, or disappear into the kind of silence even Rodney couldn't control. Her hand moved to her stomach. The choice, she realized, had already been made. The shelter smelled like industrial detergent and desperation. Pauline sat on the edge of a narrow cot, her suitcase at her feet, and tried to remember how to breathe. Around her, women moved through the fluorescent-lit space like ghosts, some with children clinging to their legs, others with eyes that had stopped seeing anything at all. She didn't belong here. Except she did. Because 24 hours ago, she'd refused to sign Rodney's papers. 24 hours ago, she'd called his bluff. And Rodney didn't bluff. By noon, her bank accounts had been frozen, pending investigation of marital asset disputes, his lawyer claimed. By 3, the locks on the mansion had been changed. By evening, she was standing in the rain with nothing but a suitcase and the clothes on her back, watching security guards block the entrance to her own home. "Mrs. Wilson is no longer authorized on the property," one of them had said, not meeting her eyes. Mr. Wilson's orders. She'd walked for hours. Tried calling friends, Rodney's friends. She realized too late and heard their voices turn cold and careful. "We really shouldn't get involved, Pauline. You understand." Hotels required credit cards she no longer had access to. Her phone battery died somewhere around midnight. The shelter was the only place left with an open door. "First time?" Pauline looked up. A woman sat on the cot across from her, maybe 40, with tired eyes and an infant asleep against her shoulder. Her name tag from a fast food job was still pinned to her shirt. "Is it that obvious?" Pauline's voice came out raw. "You're still wearing your wedding ring." Pauline looked down at her hand. The diamond caught the harsh light, throwing fragments of brilliance across the concrete floor. 2 carats. Rodney had proposed at a charity gala, made sure there were photographers present. The ring had never been about her, it had been about what she represented. The perfect accessory for a rising corporate star. She twisted it off her finger. "How long have you been here?" Pauline asked. 6 months. Since my ex emptied our account and disappeared. The woman shifted the baby higher. "I had a job lined up, but childcare costs more than I'd make. So here we are." "What's your baby's name?" "Hope." The woman smiled, bitter and beautiful. Ironic, right? Pauline's hand moved to her stomach. Still flat. Still secret. In 3 months, maybe 4, it wouldn't be secret anymore. In 6 months, she'd be the woman with the infant and the name tag and the tired eyes. Unless she became something else first. That night, she lay awake on the thin mattress and did the math. Her mother's savings account, the one Rodney didn't know about, had $8,000. Enough for maybe 3 months of rent if she found something cheap. Enough for prenatal care if she was careful. Enough to survive. But not enough to win. At 2 a.m., she pulled out the crumpled business card she'd found in her suitcase. Margaret Chin, employment attorney. A woman she'd met once at a firm party, who'd pressed the card into her hand and said, "Just in case you ever need someone who fights dirty." Pauline had smiled and tucked it away, certain she'd never need it. She'd been so certain of many things. The payphone in the shelter's hallway took quarters. Pauline fed in her last 4 and dialed. The line rang once. Twice. Then a voice, alert despite the hour, Margaret Chin. "He took everything," Pauline whispered. "My home. My accounts. My name. Everything." A pause. Then, "Did he take your voice?" Pauline looked down at her bare ring finger. At the space where her identity used to be. "Not yet." "Good. Then we have something to work with. I'll need you to tell me everything, and I mean everything, he doesn't want the world to know." Pauline closed her eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been sleeping for 3 years, suffocated under layers of silence and submission. It felt like rage. It felt like power. "There's a lot," she said. "Then start talking." "And Pauline." Margaret's voice turned sharp as a scalpel. "Whatever you do, don't tell him about the baby." "Not yet. That's our nuclear option." The line crackled with rain and static and possibility. Pauline took a breath and began to speak. The first contraction hit during a business pitch. Pauline was standing in a cramped office above a dry cleaner, 8 months pregnant, and pitching her voice modulation software to a venture capitalist who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She'd spent 6 months coding the prototype on a borrowed laptop, living in a studio apartment the size of a closet, surviving on ramen and spite. As I was saying, the application for accessibility alone. Pain ripped through her abdomen like lightning. She gripped the edge of the desk, breathing through her teeth. The VC's expression shifted from bored to alarmed. "Ms. Ledford? Are you?" "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. Another contraction, harder this time. "Closer. The ROI projections are in the appendix." Her water broke. She looked down at the puddles spreading across his expensive carpet and thought, absurdly, Margaret was right. "I should have scheduled this for after the meeting." "Jesus Christ," the VC said, already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No." Pauline straightened, even as her body screamed at her to collapse. "You're going to look at slide 12. The one with the partnership projections. Because if you don't invest now, your competitor will, and in 5 years, you're going to remember this moment as the biggest mistake of your career." He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. Another contraction. She couldn't breathe through this one. "Slide 12, she gasped. "Look at it." He looked. His eyes widened. "I'll have my lawyer draw up the term sheet," he said, already pulling out his checkbook. "How much do you need?" "Everything you've got." She made it to the hospital with a signed check for $200,000 in her purse and her body trying to tear itself in half. The delivery room was sterile and bright and lonely. No husband holding her hand. No family in the waiting room. Just Pauline and a team of nurses who looked at her chart and saw what she was. Single mother, no emergency contact, insurance barely covering the basics. "You're doing great, honey," one of them said, the kind of patronizing sweetness that made Pauline want to scream. She was not doing great. She was dying. Had to be. Nothing that hurt this much could be survivable. "One more push," the doctor said. Pauline pushed. And then a cry. Small and furious and alive. "It's a boy," someone said. She hadn't cried in months. Not when Rodney left. Not when she'd slept in the shelter. Not through any of it. But now, holding this tiny creature with Rodney's silver blue eyes and her own stubborn chin, the tears came like a flood. "We need you to push again," the doctor said gently. Pauline's head snapped up. "What?" "There's another one. Didn't anyone tell you? You're having twins." The world tilted. Twins. She didn't have enough money for one baby, let alone two. Didn't have a support system or a house or anything resembling stability. She had a studio apartment and a software prototype and a dream that suddenly seemed impossibly fragile. "I can't," she started. Another contraction. Her body didn't care what she could or couldn't do. Her body had already decided. 15 minutes later, she held two sons. Two perfect, impossible boys who looked at her like she was their entire universe. Because she was. The nurse was filling out paperwork. Names? Pauline looked down at the twins. At their matching silver blue eyes, Rodney's eyes, undeniable proof of what he'd abandoned. She thought about the man who'd called her plain. Ordinary. Nothing. She thought about the empire she was going to build with their investors' money. She thought about the voice she'd spent 3 years silencing and the voice she'd just given birth to times 2. "Ethan," she said, looking at the firstborn. "And Adrian." Strong names. Names that sounded like legacy. Names that sounded like power. "And the father's name?" the nurse asked. "For the birth certificate?" This was it. The moment Margaret had warned her about. If she put Rodney's name on the certificate, he'd have legal rights. Could swoop in years from now, claim his heirs, use them like accessories the way he'd used her. But if she left it blank, she'd be erasing their birthright. Condemning them to the same nobody from nowhere status he'd thrown in her face. Pauline looked at her sons. At their father's eyes. At her own future staring back at her. "Leave it blank," she whispered. The nurse hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Once it's filed." "I'm sure." She'd give them something better than Rodney K. Wilson's name. She'd give them a mother who refused to stay silent. 3 days later, discharged from the hospital with 2 infants and surgical recovery pain that made walking agony, Pauline stood in her tiny apartment and checked her bank account. The investors' money had cleared. She had 6 months of runway, maybe 8 if she was careful. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on the babies." Heard through the grapevine. "They better not be mine. RKW." Her hands shook. Not from fear. From rage. She typed back. "Don't worry. My sons will never know your name. They'll only know men who keep their promises." She hit send. Then she opened her laptop, pulled up the code for Vocalis Global, and got to work. One twin slept in a bassinet by her feet. The other fussed against her chest in a baby carrier. Outside, the city hummed with 1,000 voices. And for the first time in her life, Pauline added hers to the chorus. But at 3 a.m., as she finally closed her laptop, another text came through. This one from Margaret. "Just got served. Rodney's filing for a restraining order. Claims you're harassing him and threatening his reputation. Court date in 2 weeks. If he wins, you won't be able to go within 500 feet of him or his business. Which means you won't be able to pitch to any of his competitors. Which means he's trying to destroy you before you even start." Pauline looked at her sleeping sons. At the empire she'd promised to build them. At the voice she'd just found. And realized Rodney had just declared war. The only question was, did she have enough ammunition to fight back? The restraining order hearing was in 3 days, and Pauline had nothing. No evidence of Rodney's cruelty that wouldn't make her look vindictive. No proof of his abandonment that wouldn't expose her sons. No lawyer. Margaret had been honest about that. Pro bono only goes so far, honey. This kind of fight? You need a war chest I don't have. So Pauline did what she'd always done best. She got quiet. And she listened. The idea came at 2 a.m., while she was feeding Adrian and scrolling through forums for single mothers. Women sharing stories of abandonment, of custody battles fought and lost, of voices silenced by men with better lawyers and bigger bank accounts. We should have a platform, one woman wrote. Somewhere we can tell the truth without being shut down. Pauline stared at that sentence until her vision blurred. A platform for the silenced. She opened her laptop with her free hand and started coding. 72 hours later, she walked into the courtroom with a tablet and a prayer. Rodney sat at the plaintiff's table in a $3,000 suit, flanked by two attorneys who looked like they ate small businesses for breakfast. He didn't even glance at her. Vivian sat in the gallery, draped in Chanel, watching like this was dinner theater. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, looked over her glasses at Pauline. Ms. Ledford, you're representing yourself? Yes, Your Honor. Against Mr. Grayson and Mr. Park? She gestured at Rodney's legal team. That's inadvisable. I'm aware. Rodney's lead attorney stood. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. Ms. Ledford has sent over 40 text messages to my client in the past month, despite repeated requests to cease contact. She's shown up at his office building twice. She's posted disparaging comments about him on social media. I posted true comments, Pauline interrupted. The judge raised an eyebrow. You'll have your turn, Ms. Ledford. The attorney continued. My client is about to close the most important business deal of his career. Ms. Ledford's harassment is jeopardizing his professional reputation and causing him severe emotional distress. Emotional distress. The man who'd left her in the rain was claiming emotional distress. Your Honor, Pauline said, standing. Her voice didn't shake. May I present evidence? The judge nodded. Pauline opened her tablet and turned it toward the bench. This is Vocalis, a platform I launched 72 hours ago. It allows people to share their stories anonymously, if they choose, about corporate abuse, workplace harassment, and personal betrayal. In 3 days, we've had over 10,000 users sign up. Rodney's attorney scoffed. Relevance, Your Honor? I'm getting there. Pauline swiped to the next screen. 800 of those stories mention Mr. Wilson by name. Not because I encouraged them. Because they found the platform organically and recognized him from his public profile. The judge leaned forward. What kind of stories? Former employees detailing wage theft. Contractors he refused to pay. A woman he dated in college who Pauline's voice caught. She pushed through. Who he convinced to have an abortion, then ghosted when she had complications. Your Honor, this is hearsay. It's a pattern, Pauline said. And it's protected speech. These people have a right to share their experiences. I have a right to provide the platform. Rodney finally looked at her. Really looked at her. And she saw it, fear. The judge studied the tablet. Mr. Wilson, is your attorney familiar with the Streisand effect? Rodney's lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, because it seems to me that if you obtain a restraining order preventing Ms. Ledford from operating her business within 500 feet of yours, you'll be validating every story on this platform. The media will have a field day. Vivian shifted in her seat. Rodney's jaw tightened. However, the judge continued, Ms. Ledford, if even one of these stories is proven false, you're opening yourself to defamation suits that will bankrupt you. Are you prepared for that risk? Pauline thought of her sons, asleep in Margaret's office down the hall. Of the $8,000 left in her account. Of the empire she'd promised to build on nothing but rage and code. Yes, Your Honor. I am. The judge was quiet for a long moment. I'm denying the restraining order. But Ms. Ledford, I'm also issuing a warning. One misstep, and you'll be back in this courtroom on the wrong side of the bench. Do you understand? I understand. She gathered her things and walked out. Rodney caught her in the hallway, his attorneys trailing behind like attack dogs. You think you've won? His voice was low, venomous. You've just made yourself a target. I will destroy that little platform of yours. I will destroy you. Pauline met his eyes, those eyes she'd once loved, now just ice and entitlement. You already tried that, she said. It didn't take. She turned to leave. His hand shot out, gripping her arm. I'm warning you, Pauline. Walk away now or… Mr. Wilson. Margaret appeared from nowhere, phone raised, camera recording. You're assaulting my client. In a courthouse. On camera. Please continue. He dropped her arm like it burned him. Pauline walked away, Margaret at her side. They made it to the elevator before Pauline's knees buckled. You okay? Margaret asked. No. Pauline leaned against the wall. He's right. He's going to destroy Vocalis. He has the resources, the connections, Her phone buzzed. A notification from the Vocalis dashboard. 50,000 new users in the last hour. She refreshed. 75,000. What the hell? Margaret looked over her shoulder. Another notification. This one from Twitter. Someone had live tweeted the hearing. The video of Rodney grabbing her arm was already viral. Hashtag believe survivors. Hashtag Vocalis voices. Hashtag Rodney Wilson is over. Pauline stared at the screen as the numbers climbed. 100,000 users. 150,000. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Ms. Ledford? This is CNN. We'd like to interview you about Vocalis and the restraining order case. Are you available? She hung up. It rang again immediately. Ms. Ledford, TechCrunch here. Again. Forbes. Again. The Washington Post. Margaret was grinning. Pauline. Do you understand what's happening? Pauline looked at her phone. At the viral video. At the platform she'd built in 72 hours on rage and desperation and the last of her savings. At the voice she'd found. And the chorus that had found her back. Yeah, she whispered. I think I'm about to change everything. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. Impressive. But you should know, I've just hired a team to audit every story on your platform. Every user. Every claim. And when we find the lies, and we will, I'll sue you for everything you don't have. Sleep tight. RKW. The elevator doors opened. Pauline stepped inside, Margaret beside her. He's going to come after the platform, Pauline said. I know. He's going to find something. Some story that's exaggerated or unverifiable or… probably. So what do I do? Margaret smiled. You make sure the truth is louder than his lawyers. The doors closed. And Pauline realized she had 1 week, maybe 2, before Rodney's audit team found a crack in her platform. 1 week to turn 150,000 users into an army. 1 week to build something strong enough to withstand a war. The question was, could she do it while raising infant twins on 4 hours of sleep and a bank account running on fumes? Her phone buzzed. Another notification. 200,000 users. She smiled. Watch me. 5 years later, Rodney K. Wilson stood in his corner office and watched his stock price drop. Again. It's that goddamn platform, his CFO said, pacing. Vocalis Global. They just released a feature that lets employees rate companies anonymously. Every tech firm in the valley is getting destroyed, but where he pulled up the screen. We're at 2.3 stars out of 5. The lowest in our sector. Rodney's jaw tightened. Who owns it? That's the problem. It's a shell company. Incorporated in Delaware, owners hidden behind layers of LLCs. We've been trying to find out for 3 years. 3 years. The same 3 years Rodney had watched his empire slowly crack while some invisible enemy chipped away at its foundation. First the rating system. Then the salary transparency tool that made his underpaid engineers revolt. Then the whistleblower hotline that exposed his VP of operations for sexual harassment. Every feature designed to destroy men exactly like him. Buy them out, Rodney said. We tried. They won't even take meetings. Then threaten them. Sue them. I don't care. I want that platform gone. His phone buzzed. Vivian. Darling, have you seen the journal? We need to talk. He opened the Wall Street Journal app. Vocalis Global valued at $2.3 billion after Series D funding. The anonymous founder company has revolutionized corporate accountability. $2.3 billion. Whoever owned Vocalis had just become wealthier than Rodney, while systematically destroying everything he'd built. His phone rang. Private equity firm he'd been courting for months. Rodney, we're pulling out of the merger talks. What? Why? Your Vocalis rating just dropped to 2.1. Our investors won't touch you. Sorry. The line went dead. Rodney hurled his phone across the room. Across town, in a glass-walled penthouse office overlooking the city, Pauline watched the same stock ticker. Her sons, now 5 years old, sharp-eyed and curious, were building an elaborate tower out of blocks on her office floor. Mommy, look how tall. Ethan held up his creation. Very impressive, sweetheart. She didn't look away from the screen. Rodney's stock had dropped another 3 points. Her assistant knocked. Ms. Ledford? The Times is here for your profile interview. And you have a call holding from Wilson Corp's legal team. 5th time this week. Tell legal we're not interested. And give me 5 minutes with the Times. She closed her laptop and knelt beside her sons. Adrian, Ethan. Remember what we talked about? About Mommy's work. They nodded, silver blue eyes solemn. Some people are going to ask questions. About our family. About your father. We don't have a father, Adrian said matter-of-factly. Pauline's chest tightened. That's right, baby. We have each other. And Uncle Margaret, Ethan added. She smiled. And Aunt Margaret. Yes. The assistant knocked again. Ms. Ledford, I'm sorry, but there's something you need to see. Wilson Corp just issued a press release. Pauline stood, took the tablet. Wilson Corp announces merger with Ashford Kent Industries. CEO Rodney K. Wilson to wed Vivian Ashford Kent in televised ceremony. This union represents the future of corporate America. The wedding was scheduled for 8 weeks from today, at the Ashford estate, with every major business publication invited. Pauline stared at Vivian's photograph, at Rodney's smug smile, at the life he'd built on the bones of the woman he'd discarded. Her phone buzzed. Margaret. Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. Pauline looked at her sons, at the empire she'd built in secret, at the voice she'd amplified into a weapon. Then she opened her email and typed. To Wilson Corp Communications. Vocalis Global accepts your interview request. We're ready to reveal our founder. See you at the wedding. She hit send. And smiled. The invitation arrived at the shelter. Sister Maria called Pauline personally. Someone sent you mail here. Return address says Wilson Corporation. Should I throw it away? Pauline's hand tightened on her phone. Open it. The sound of tearing paper. A pause. Then, it's a wedding invitation. For Rodney Wilson and Vivian Ashford Kent. Sister Maria's voice turned sharp. That bastard. Want me to burn it? Read the note. Pauline. Despite our past, I believe in second chances. Come celebrate with us. Show the world we've both moved forward. RKW. Pauline laughed. Actually laughed. He wanted her to come looking pathetic. Wanted photos of his poor ex-wife in the crowd while he marries an heiress. Proof he's magnanimous. Charitable. It would play beautifully with the Ashford Kent family investors currently concerned about his Vocalis rating. Forward me a photo, Pauline said. And Sister Maria? Expect a donation. Enough to renovate the East Wing. Margaret was already calling. Tell me that invitation is a joke. It's an opportunity. It's a trap, Pauline. He wants to humiliate you. Let him try. She pulled up the wedding details. Coastal estate. 500 guests. Every major publication covering it. Live streamed to millions. The perfect stage. What are you planning? Margaret's voice carried a warning. I'm accepting his invitation. Pauline. And I'm bringing +2 guests. She opened her son's bedroom door. Ethan and Adrian were asleep, moonlight catching their silver blue eyes. Eyes that would look very familiar to certain wedding guests. Margaret was quiet. You're going to tell them. I'm going to show them. Pauline walked to her office and pulled up a file she'd been building for 5 years. Project Reckoning. Inside, DNA results. Birth certificates. Photos timestamped to her pregnancy. Text messages from Rodney denying the children. Financial records showing he'd frozen her assets while she was 8 months pregnant. And one more thing. A video confession from Rodney's VP offering to testify about the bonus incentive Rodney had offered employees to dig up dirt on his crazy ex-wife. Attempted witness tampering. Corporate espionage. All documented. Her phone lit up. Email from Vivian's assistant. Mr. Wilson would like to confirm your attendance. Will you be bringing a guest? Pauline typed, confirmed. +2. She opened a new message to her team. Book the presidential suite at the Ashford Estate Hotel. I don't care what it costs. Margaret called back. The presidential suite? That's $40,000 a night. I know. You're going to walk in with your children and announce he's their father? Not announce. Pauline looked at her reflection. I'm going to let them figure it out themselves. And if he denies it? Then I release the DNA results to every outlet, along with the evidence of what he tried to do to me. Silence. You're not going to attend a wedding, Margaret said quietly. No. You're going to end him. Pauline's smile was sharp as broken glass. I'm going to speak. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. I know what you're planning. Show up at my wedding and you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Final warning. RKW. Pauline forwarded it to her legal team, added it to the file, and began counting down the days. Forks work from the outside in, Pauline said, watching her sons navigate the place settings she'd arranged on their dining table. And when someone insults you, what do? Smile, Ethan said, picking up the salad fork with perfect precision. And say thank you, Adrian added, his posture impeccable. They were 5 years old and learning to move through a world that would judge them before they spoke a word. Pauline had hired the best etiquette coaches who worked with diplomats' children, a speech therapist to eliminate any trace of the accent she'd grown up with, the one Rodney had mocked, a tailor who custom-made miniature suits that cost more than her first month's rent at the shelter. Again, she said, from the top. You walk into a room full of people who think you don't belong. What do? Hold our heads high, they said in unison. And if someone asks about our father? Ethan's jaw tightened, so much like Rodney it made her chest ache. We say we don't discuss family matters with strangers. Perfect. But Adrian was frowning. Mommy, why are we learning all this? She knelt beside him, smoothed his hair. Because the world isn't fair, baby. And sometimes we have to speak their language before they'll listen to ours. Is that why you work so much? The question hit like a blade between ribs. She did work too much. Missed bedtimes and school events and the 1,000 small moments she'd never get back. But every hour at the office was an hour building their future. Building the weapon she'd need when the time came. Yes, she said honestly. I'm building something for us. Something no one can take away. Margaret appeared in the doorway, face pale. Pauline, we have a problem. She followed Margaret to the study. Her assistant had a laptop open, hands shaking. Someone leaked it, Margaret said. The vocalist found her identity. It's trending on Twitter. Pauline's blood went cold. How much do they know? Everything. Your name. Your connection to Rodney. The timeline. Someone did a deep dive and connected all the dots. She grabbed the laptop. The thread had 50,000 retweets. Vocalist Global founded by Rodney Wilson's ex-wife. Did she build a $2.3 billion company just for revenge? The comments were vicious. Half called her a hero. Half called her a vindictive psycho using corporate accountability as a weapon. Her phone exploded with notifications. Interview requests. Think pieces. Her investors calling emergency meetings. It gets worse, Margaret said quietly. Rodney just went live on CNBC. She unmuted the TV. Rodney, perfectly composed in his corner office, I'm saddened to learn that my ex-wife has spent years building a platform designed to destroy me professionally. This isn't about accountability, It's about a woman who can't let go. I wish her healing. The anchor. There are rumors she'll be attending your wedding. Is that true? If Pauline wants to come, she's welcome. I believe in forgiveness. Though I hope she understands that her campaign of harassment needs to end. Campaign of harassment. He just reframed 5 years of her work as stalking. Her phone rang. Lead investor. Pauline, we need to talk about optics. This revenge narrative is killing us. Board wants you to step down as CEO until this blows over. No. Then we're pulling our Series D funding. Effective immediately. The line went dead. Margaret was staring at her. What do we do? Pauline looked at the TV. At Rodney's smug face. At the empire she'd built about to crumble because he'd gotten ahead of the story. She had 3 options. 1. Cancel the wedding appearance. Disappear. Let him win. 2. Go to the wedding and look exactly like the vindictive ex he'd painted her as. 3. Change the narrative entirely. Her sons appeared in the doorway, still in their tiny suits. Mommy? Ethan's voice was small. Are we still going to the wedding? She looked at them. At their silver blue eyes. At the truth she'd kept hidden for 5 years. And realized Rodney had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd given her a reason to go nuclear. Yes, baby, she said, smiling. We're going to the wedding. She turned to Margaret. Call every outlet that requested an interview. Tell them I'm ready to talk. About what? Everything. Pauline pulled up the Project Reckoning file. It's time the world knew the whole story. Pauline, if you reveal the twins now, before the wedding, you lose the element of surprise. I'm not revealing the twins. She opened a different file. One she'd never shown anyone. Security footage from the night Rodney left her. Audio of him mocking her pregnancy. Photos of the NDA he'd tried to force her to sign. And one more thing. Financial records showing he'd shorted Vocal's stock 3 months ago. He'd been betting on her company to fail, while publicly claiming he wanted her to heal. We're not playing defense anymore, Pauline said. We're going scorched earth. Margaret's eyes widened. If you release this now, he'll have 1 week to spin it before the wedding. 1 week to decide, does he cancel and look guilty? Or does he go through with it and face me anyway? And if he cancels? Pauline smiled. Then I've already won. She hit send on the first email. Her phone rang immediately. CNN. Ms. Ledford, we're ready whenever you are. She looked at her sons. At the future she'd promised them. I'm ready now. The Ashford estate looked like a fairy tale. White silk draped everywhere. 10,000 Ecuadorian roses. String quartet playing Vivaldi as 500 guests settled into gilded chairs overlooking the ocean. Rodney stood at the altar in custom tuxedo, Vivian radiant in a gown that cost 6 figures. Cameras everywhere. 3 networks. 2 million live stream viewers. Perfect. Pauline waited in the back, sons on either side. Matching charcoal suits. Perfectly styled hair. They looked like legacy. Like Wilson Ayres. She wore obsidian, liquid night. Diamonds at her throat. Hair swept elegantly. She didn't look like the woman he'd left in the rain. She looked like the woman who owned him. Mommy, everyone's staring, Adrian whispered. Let them. The ceremony began. Traditional vows. Vivian's father beaming, the man whose empire was about to merge with Rodney's firm, creating a billion-dollar conglomerate. The officiant smiled. If anyone objects. Pauline stood. The collective gasp echoed over ocean waves. Rodney's head snapped toward her, face straining. Pauline. Sit down. I'm not objecting. Her voice carried, amplified by the ceremony mics. I'm delivering a wedding gift. She walked down the aisle, sons following. Every camera tracked them. Ethan and Adrian's silver blue eyes identical to Rodney's, impossible to miss in afternoon light. Vivian's father frowned. Whispers erupted. Security, Rodney hissed. I wouldn't. Pauline stopped at the altar. Not unless you want me to discuss your company's finances publicly. His jaw tightened. I don't know what. You're bankrupt, Rodney. 48 hours until your debts come due. Vivian's hand flew to her throat. What is she talking about? 3 months ago, Wilson Corp took a high-risk loan. Anonymous investor. Pauline pulled an envelope from her clutch. I'm that investor. As of this morning, I'm calling the debt. All $847 million. The crowd exploded. Rodney lunged for the envelope, but Ethan stepped between them. My mother is speaking. It's rude to interrupt. Cameras caught everything. Rodney stared at the boy. Those unmistakable eyes. Then at Adrian, identical, same proud posture. No, Rodney breathed. Yes. Pauline handed the envelope to Vivian. DNA results. Birth certificates. Texts where their father denied their existence. Vivian opened it, hands shaking. Face went white. These are your children? Voice cracking. You had children and... They're lying. Rodney grabbed for papers. Fabricated. 3 independent labs. Pauline's voice was ice. Court admissible. Time-stamped. Proving you abandoned your sons at 8 months pregnant. Vivian's father stood, murderous. Wilson, is this true? Sir, I can explain. Did you abandon a pregnant woman and unborn children? Silence. Rodney looked at Pauline. The children. His crumbling empire. I didn't know, he whispered. Liar, Adrian said, small voice cutting through chaos. Mommy showed us your texts. Ethan held up a tablet. They better not be mine. RKW. Livestream chat exploded. Vivian ripped off her veil. Wedding's off. Father, the merger. Cancelled. The old man's voice cut steel. We don't do business with men who abandon children. He walked out. Half the guests followed. Rodney stood alone, billion-dollar future walking away. Pauline turned to leave. His hand gripped her wrist. You can't, that debt, you'll destroy me. Yes, I will. Please. Voice breaking. I'll give you anything. You already did. She looked at her sons. A reason to find my voice. She pulled free, children beside her. Behind her, Rodney collapsed. Cameras captured everything. At the exit, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Congratulations. You destroyed the wrong man. Check your Vocalis servers. V. Blood went cold. Admin dashboard. System breach. All user data compromised. 800,000 anonymous accounts exposed. Every whistleblower. Every survivor. Everyone who trusted Vocalis. All doxed. 10 minutes before media found out. The headlines wrote themselves. Rodney Wilson files for bankruptcy. Ashford Kent merger dead. CEO abandoned twin sons. The receipts. Pauline watched them scroll across her monitor from her corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, where she'd once walked with a suitcase and nowhere to go. Rodney's company collapsed in 72 hours. Investors fled. Board ousted him. His penthouse was already listed, assets liquidated to pay the debt he owed her. The debt she'd immediately forgiven. Not mercy. Strategy. Let him live with what he's lost, she'd told Margaret. Bankruptcy he can recover from. Shame is forever. But the Vocalis breach, that was the real crisis. 800,000 users exposed. The people she'd promised to protect, now vulnerable. Lawsuits started within hours. Her board wanted her head. Pauline called an emergency press conference. The room was packed. Every major outlet. Cameras everywhere. She stepped to the podium, sons in the front row watching with silver blue eyes. My name is Pauline D. Ledford. And I owe you the truth. Silence fell. 6 years ago, I was abandoned 8 months pregnant. Left with nothing. I could have stayed silent, safer, easier. But silence protects the wrong people. She looked at the cameras. So I built Vocalis. A place where the silence could speak. Yes, because of what happened to me. Because I knew 800,000 of you needed what I did to be heard. A reporter, about the data breach. I take full responsibility. Every affected user gets free identity protection for life, funded by me. Plus a $100 million victim support fund. Murmurs rippled. People say I built Vocalis for revenge. They're half right. It was personal. Every feature came from being powerless. But it was also necessary. She pulled up statistics. Corporate accountability reforms. Wage theft cases won. Harassment policies changed. Rodney Wilson's fall wasn't revenge. It was proof that truth, documented and amplified, beats any legal team. Another reporter, but you orchestrated his wedding humiliation. I gave him choices. He could have come clean years ago. Could have chosen accountability over image. He chose image. Consequences were his own. Ethan stood. Our mom says everyone deserves to be heard. Adrian joined him. Even when it's scary. Pauline's throat tightened. The opposite of silence isn't noise, it's truth. And truth changes everything. She closed her laptop. I'm not stepping down. Vocalis 2.0 launches next month with military-grade encryption. The people who trusted us deserve better than my mistakes. And Rodney Wilson? Pauline thought of him alone in his emptied penthouse. Of the children he'd abandoned now standing beside her. Rodney Wilson is no longer my concern. This was always bigger than him. Her phone buzzed outside. Unknown number. You won. But victory looks lonely. Was it worth it? RKW. She stared at the message. At the empire she'd built from nothing. The voice she'd found. The sons who'd never be silenced. She typed, I'm not lonely. I have everything you threw away. Blocked the number. Turned to her children. Ready to go home? Can we get ice cream? Ethan asked. And tell us the story? Adrian added. About starting the company? Pauline knelt, smoothed their hair. Once upon a time, there was a woman who learned the most powerful thing she owned was her voice. And when she used it, the world had no choice but to listen. They walked out together into camera flashes and city noise. And Pauline D. Ledford felt something she'd forgotten. Peace. Not because the war was over, but because she'd won the right to be heard.